Well, I guess you do put the video
Well,
on.
I'd throw the video on YouTube, which they're
Yeah.
sharing now because I just started the recording. Well, no, you
Yeah.
get a flash shot of the recording starting, which is just me on screen. This is I don't edit these. I'm just like, should I, it's like, am I going to delete them or am I going to archive them
No,
on
man, these got
YouTube?
to live
So,
in perpetuity, my
right,
man.
right. So
Yeah, the goal is that when somebody has an episode of The Twilight Zone or just Twilight Zone on the shelf, that right next to that episode, metaphorically, is the definitive breakdown of that episode, which is Time Enough podcast.
yeah, see, I've noted like on here, the YouTube's gotten weird because people show up and they comment on these, which is nice. Thank you for those doing so. Because yeah, this isn't the proper podcast, but people will hear that on YouTube, but and such at some point. Uh, where was I going with that? People comment here, so yeah, these get a few people listen on YouTube, a few people listen on the podcast catcher, probably more on the
Yeah.
podcast catcher. The films
Yeah.
and filth one is weird that it's hit some algorithm, and some of the
Okay.
episodes go into like 1,000 or a couple thousand views because they're going algorithms. And I think it's pissing people off
The
because
algorithms so on YouTube, you're getting a couple of thousand views on each one of those.
it's kind of tapered down a little bit, but
Oh,
for
but
a
that's
couple
great,
months,
man. I wish we had that on our mission log YouTube channel.
right? But I think what was happening is people were coming in thinking it was the actual movie and getting pissed off, and like you don't see downvotes anymore. But if you look in the
Yeah.
creator studio, you will see the downvotes, which is
Well, yeah.
no, it's
Okay.
it's just funny for me that people
Yeah.
came in for Captain America 1990 and were like, "What's this? Screw this downvotes."
Is that the one
Like I
is that
find
the one
that.
is that the one with the Hoff?
Yeah. No, oh no, no, no. Oh,
Oh no, that was Nick
that's Nick
Fury. Sorry, that
Fury.
was Nick
Yeah.
Fury. Yeah.
This has Captain America is played by J.D. Salinger's son in that movie.
Yeah. No, I know exactly the one you're talking about. I know exactly the one.
Uh
Um,
they have a
that's
good
great though.
Red
I'm just saying
Skull.
if we got a couple of extra views on Talking Ted, because people thought they might have been stumbling across a TED talk with Seth MacFarlane, I'm okay with that.
Well, I certainly listened to that one. I just on my Disney podcast, which is kind of weirder, but we did the Dark Disney because of that TED episode. Like I saw that and it was they showed the scene from Watcher in the Woods. It's like Dark
Yeah,
Disney.
yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah.
great idea. So for
God, I still
October,
need to watch that movie.
yeah, I did now. For
Yeah.
October, we did
Uh-huh.
The Black Hole, Watcher in the Woods, Something Wicked This Way Comes, and Return to Oz.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Just to be clear, the only one of those that, well, The Black Hole is a weird movie that it has great actors, it looks great, it has awesome designs, everything about it's great except the pace.
Well, yeah, but I think that was just like was that just what was in vogue in like 78, 79 when those movies came out? Because I think the same thing with the motion picture, which I actually Star Trek the motion picture, which I absolutely love, but it's just kind of like
It's something about the pacing because the motion
yeah,
picture came out like a week or two earlier in The Black Hole or after. They
yeah,
came out like almost the same time. In fact, maybe
right.
maybe it was the same weekend. I don't remember, but yeah, the motion picture I can watch infinitely, especially now that we have the bridge noises back on the bridge and you can actually
Oh
see a few
God.
red
Oh yeah.
shirts now.
Yeah, I love that movie to pieces. I really do. It is
The Black Hole,
uh
it's like I love everything about that movie except actually sitting down and watching it. Because every few
that's
years
funny.
I'm like, yeah, everything about that movie is so cool. And then I put it
My
on, I'm like, this is not bumping along well.
When we were moving my son into his dorm room when he was a junior in high school and he went to the Indiana Academy for Math, Science, and Humanities, which is on a university campus. So we're moving him in, and his roommate was just like all black hole memorabilia.
See, I
So
can appreciate
and
that.
and and the film and a couple of different versions of it, and he was like, yeah, and it was, and we had just lost Robert Forster, which was sad.
Yeah.
So we got to chat about that. But yeah, good kid.
But
So
yeah, for me that, as a kid, like I did watch a lot as a kid because, it's the big clamshell VHS, right? It's
right.
they'll let you rent it because it's in the kids section, but you're like, ooh, it's PG. Yeah, it's live
Hmm.
action. Yeah. So, I have seen it quite a bit. That was even the second time I did a podcast on it. So, uh, I'm redoing in the Sci-Fi Sanctuary. I did a couple apes. We did the first two apes movies. So now that we're doing the apes for podcast 1999, I just flipped the guest.
I know we chatted about this. So I hit John up as a little bit of a preview, and I just I think I just sent him so dot dot dot. And he came back with yes. And I go, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And his response was, it's going to be a goddamn glorious ape fest.
Well, see, he got the first apes this time because we talked to him about Beneath a few years ago. So, and then Andrew, who maybe you've been on a podcast with, he'll do the
Yeah.
second one this time around, and
Yeah.
we have Sarsaparillas singing Gorilla coming in for Escape, who is a guy we know from Atlanta. I know his real name, man, but I don't think he's quite as cagey about it anymore. But yeah, he'd go to clubs in a big blue ape costume and a string bass and do like lounge tunes, like between punk rock acts. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
you can't do that's one of the coolest things you could possibly do, you know?
So you're ready. Yeah, I mean, you're getting ready to wrap this up. This is episode 130. I know you're going to go through all of this. We got to be at least halfway through season 5, yeah?
Not halfway, but we're
Oh, it's
making
episode 10.
inroads. Yeah, we're
Episode 10.
making
Okay,
inroads. It's
yeah.
36, I think.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, it's a
lot.
long season. Yep.
After that,
Uh
I'm going to go directly to Jordan Peele. I've adopted, Mark has lit, called this the Vortex method, where I do the original Twilight Zone, then I go to the most recent one, and then I
uh-huh.
loop around the Night Gallery, then loop around to the 2000s one, and end with the
Okay.
80s Twilight Zone.
Hmm.
Um,
The 80s Twilight Zone movie or Twilight Zone series?
both.
Both. Ah.
Because
Boom.
the movies kind of, I mean, it's got the same feel as the series except with better
Yeah.
directors. Well,
Mhm.
actually, there's plenty of good directors on the TV show, so I shouldn't say that.
Yeah,
Um,
I would think that would be true. I never really get this glare like right on my glasses like this. Like I said, it's not a big deal, but just I was just thinking for like other stuff that we do. Wonder why it's happening now and not other times. All right.
well, yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know if you've seen my Facebook. I just changed my profile, and it has an insane glare on the glasses, which I hate. But otherwise, I like the image. So, which
Good deal. So leave it, man. Roll with it. I'm ready. I'm ready to move on, man. I think anybody listening to the unedited version is probably losing their patience with me as of this time. Just like I thought we were here to talk about Twilight Zone, man.
hey, if you're in for because the patrons get this about a month early, right? And then
Okay.
the YouTubers get it later. But if you're here for the pre-show, I mean, you can fast forward if you want.
Yeah. So
I like
you
listening to
got that going
pre-shows.
for you.
Yeah, I like listening to pre. Here's the thing: I never listen to my pre-shows. I'll listen to the mission log pre-shows, but I won't
Okay.
listen to
Yeah.
mine because I'm like, I've been there, I had that
Gotcha.
conversation. I want to hear
Gotcha.
the one I edited, and
Yeah.
put music on and stuff. I don't
Well,
stick
it looks
music in
like
the middle anymore, so that's the problem.
gotcha. It looks like I'll be John contacted me to cover a couple of episodes, but great news. Norman was feeling better, so he wanted to do a few.
I heard him on a
Um
few.
yeah, so Norman got to come back for um
Equinox, because that's
Equinox
came out.
parts 1 and 2,
Yeah.
and then another episode, and which was great. I was scheduled to do Equinox with John.
Mm.
And but Norman was great, was back. So, like I said, awesome news.
Well, that's
And
his
I'm gonna
seat.
do. Oh no, yeah, yeah, no, it was Tinker Tailor Doctor Spy.
Ah, okay.
So I get to. So that's an episode. So we'll talk about that one. And it really, like honestly, while it's you'll have to listen to the episode to hear what I think. I think there was a lot I could pull out of it, which I was happy about. But yeah,
Got
so
that all queued
Norman,
up. I had to find my season. It turned out my season 6 disc 1 was like a completely different spot than the Voyager
yeah,
set.
yeah, but no, it is really, really inspiring how, Norman's handled, everything he's going through. And I know you went through something similar. And if I get up and the hotel doesn't have free coffee, it's like the worst day ever for me. So, to see people actually, dealing with, real stuff and dealing with it so gracefully, and that he was well enough to come back and do some episodes has been fantastic. So
I was a real dumbass. I kept going to work. So yeah, but I don't know
we all deal in different ways, Matt.
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he should have not quit for a while. That makes sense. And I'm
Yeah.
now like, why didn't I just take 4 months off? Because I could have, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Also, I had this weird thing where like I was diagnosed and started, treatment or whatever, and then a week after, like one of our coworkers who's I like him, he's a nice guy, but he's one of those just kind of like dark cloud sort of guys, right?
Hmm.
A fun dark
Oh yeah.
cloud sort of guy, but a week later he suddenly comes down with like stage 4 lymphoma. He left the company for good. He's doing okay now. He
Yeah.
did make it
Oh,
through
good,
that, so
good.
that's
That's
why I'm not. Yeah,
serious.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be telling the story if he had like
Right.
died. But everyone at the company was like, "Is he trying to show you up?" Like,
It's not a competition.
your lame ass stage one. So
Oh, it's terrible.
yeah, yeah. No, the only lingering thing is my nails are weirder now in general, and I cannot grow my hair out anymore. Like I have to keep it short because it just froze out now.
Really?
Yeah, I'll just stick because I went around for
Yeah.
years. Honestly, I'm 45. I shouldn't go around trying to rock a Beatles cut anymore anyway. But I did
Yeah.
that like probably into my 30s. Just like I'd get a haircut and I'd be at Beatles for sale, and then when I got to a Revolver, I'd go get a haircut.
I remember I think it was a TV movie for some reason. Might have been an after school special, but it was a kid got chemo and then his hair grew back curly,
Oh,
which
it grows back curly at first,
at first,
like
okay.
kind of like feathery and curly, right?
Yeah.
This is my normal hair now, but I I don't know if actually if I grew it to a certain length, the weight might bring it back down. So I think anyway, I'm a short hair guy now, so that's
Good. You look
fine.
good.
I look
Yeah, you
slicker that way probably.
boyish good looks, full head of hair. Look at you, man.
Yeah,
You're just gloating at this
yeah,
point.
you can't really run long hair, I think, past age 40 very convincingly. There's exceptions. Kyle MacLachlan was the doppelganger in Twin Peaks. He was rocking the long hair, okay. But
Hmm.
you also got him with the short hair, so you got the best of both worlds.
That's true. You can, yeah, best of both worlds.
I'm also saying that because I just finally got around to starting season 3 of Twin Peaks. The podcast I listened to is doing Lynch. So, but
Gotcha.
it took me, here's the thing. I watched the show and then I was watching Fire Walk with Me. And it took me like 3 weeks to get around to watching the last 10 minutes of that movie. If you've seen it, you know why. I was like, I have to finish it before I go and start season 3. It's like the worst
Yep.
murder sequence ever, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, I kind of got the last 10 minutes to watch, but do I really want to watch them? So but yeah, yeah. So just started season 3 last night actually. But I was like, oh, okay. Kyle MacLachlan's look, he can rock long hair and short hair. Good for him.
Perfect. That's the dream right there.
Okay, let's see. I got my notes here. Do you have the opening narration in any
I
form, say a
do.
wiki page?
I have it right here. It's a
Yeah,
short one.
good for Rod. Okay, let me give 5 seconds of silence, and then we will bop on into this.
Perfect.
Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we cover all the episodes of The Twilight Zone and see if they are made up of phantoms. This is Matt here, as always. Coming back, it's Mike Richards from Mission Log to Orville. How it be?
Good to be here, Matt. Always a pleasure, sir.
So this one, the seventh is made up of phantoms. I sent you a message for this, just like without even looking at the plot synopsis or anything. I do that for a few. I'm like seventh Phantoms. That sounds cool. Although last week was Probe 7 over and out. That's kind of confusing. So maybe
It
they
it,
should.
it is. And next week's episode, just kind of like with the autoplay, the opening scene, I was like, I have got to watch that one. A drink from a certain fountain.
I'll have to check who's up for that. A little bit of making the sausage. I made the list at work and I never sent it to my normal computer, so I have to go to work to see who I assigned episodes. If you ask for one, I probably remember, but yeah, I have to go to work to check. This one, the seventh, is made up of phantoms. It's Rod doing a Civil War thing, which I guess he's done several times. So I guess not Civil War just after it's Custer's Last Stand, but I kind of am I have a history degree. Am I stupid for grouping them together a little bit? The Civil War and
Well, it
Custer.
was sort of like once the Union stopped, you know, their hostilities with the Confederacy, the Confederates, they just decided to like instead of like having any kind of like a peace dividend or send people back home, they just decided to go west. So I think lumping them together is fair. I mean, I'd say most of these people are probably Civil War vets and
And also when
etc.
I was like 11 or 12, that's when Dances with Wolves came out, right? So that would have like
Yeah,
tied the knot in my head because I'm just learning about this stuff because under age
yeah,
10, you probably don't have a good grasp of the Civil War unless you're a, savant kid or something. So,
yeah.
so
And
I'm
I see
seeing that.
you're letting me expand my creds beyond World War II, which I was sort of unknowingly volunteering for assignments with you that were World War II centric, right? Inglorious Bastards and some other stuff. The other Twilight Zone episode. Um, the the episode that has the same name as a Strange New Worlds one with Quantum Leap guy. Um,
Quality of Mercy. There we go.
Quality of Mercy. There you go.
By the way,
I
I'm
knew it. I
impressed.
knew it. It was just a game I was playing to see if you would get it.
I'm impressed I got it, to be perfectly honest. I'm usually not very good at the title game. But yeah, yeah. So I watched this one a few times. I went to the wiki page to look at Custer's Last Stand, Battle of
Hmm.
Little Bighorn. That's To be honest, that's never been a bit of history that really caught my attention. There are a lot of bits of history that do catch my attention. Even the
Yeah.
wiki page, I kind of burnt out. I mean, if I read a good book on it, that'd be cool. I
Right.
recently read a great book about the history of cowboy culture. So
Okay.
that was interesting. I'm sure I could find one, but yeah, something about the allure of this doesn't, not the episode, but the Battle of Little Bighorn as a legendary thing. And 1963 is such a weird, or four is such a weird, three actually. I'm looking at my air date. It's a weird time for thinking about the Civil War and cowboys and Indians and Rod Serling being kind of
Well,
progressive guy, but it's still kind of like it's weird. This is weird tonally.
it was 100 year, anniversary, 1963. It's, like I said, 100 years prior, we were in the Civil War. Maybe there was some kind of nostalgia there, but I don't know a lot about it either. Like I've been hearing about Custer's Last Stand my whole life, but everything I know about Custer's Last Stand at this point came from this episode of The Twilight Zone. Um,
Oh, by the way, I
However,
did figure out from the wiki that most of what they're saying is accurate. That I
okay,
confirmed. Like they're
okay,
not,
good, good. That that,
they
that
are,
makes that
you
makes
actually
me
do
feel.
learn from this episode.
Yeah, that makes me feel all that much better. But it sounds like Custer and his guys were, splitting into three groups to try to slaughter 200 Sioux and got their butts handed to them. And yeah, that's a thing that could happen.
And especially I think most modern folks are like, yeah, they deserved it. Where I think
I'm not saying.
in
I'm just
63,
saying.
there's still a little bit of a lure. I think it's starting. We're like at half sheen here, where people are still
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, Custer, a legendary figure. Is this okay? You
And
know,
he walked away only losing an arm after getting
something
like
like
probably
that.
200 of his people slaughtered. Yeah, that's the thing that could happen too, I guess.
Right, right. Well, before we get into the deep deeps, I'll do a bit of trivia on this one. Uh, Original air date was September 6th, 1963. The script is a Serling. Alan Crosland Jr. directed. A TV man, he also helmed 16 episodes of Wonder Woman, 12 episodes of Adam 12, that seems fitting, and 4 episodes of The $6 Million Man, which is what I want to see. I want to see the Wonder Woman too. Sergeant William Connors was played by Ron Foster. He was in 24 episodes of Highway Patrol as Officer Garvey. Shout out to Genealogy covering the Roddenberry written episodes of that series. And shout out to Foster's role in 1984's Ninja 3, The Denomination. The Domination, not the denomination. Those words are close. Pretty sure I picked that up in a weird mom and
Sorry.
pop video store somewhere in the late 80s. Randy Boone was McCluskey. His career does not seem that prolific, but he did show up multiple times on The Virginian, and he's got single episode credits for Kung Fu and Kolchak the Night Stalker. Corporal Richard Langsford was played by Warren Oates. He showed up in The Wild Bunch and Two-Lane Blacktop, but what made my eyes light up was his role as Sergeant Halka in the Bill Murray comedy Stripes, a movie I do not want to reveal how many times I've probably watched.
Is he your big toe, Matthew?
He's my big toe, yeah. Here's the thing, though. I do in my head often conflate that movie with the first 45 minutes of Full Metal Jacket, and it's very confusing.
Yeah,
Because they have the same arc for the first 40. Actually,
they
the whole
sure
movie
do.
does when you really think about it.
Yeah.
In that the first part of Stripes is also the best part.
Oh, that's a
But
film school thesis right there.
here I'm gonna lay down some real controversial hot takes. I have watched Stripes in its entirety probably a couple dozen times. I've only watched the first 45 minutes of Full Metal Jacket a couple dozen times and the ending 2 or 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Once I get to Nam, I'm out. We just got rid of the
Yeah.
two best actors. What are we doing here?
It's like two different movies. Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely like the first one better. Also, it's like, hey, I'm going to put on Full Metal Jacket. I'm going to be finished in 45 minutes, you know? Stripes is a bigger commitment. That's an hour and a half.
Facts. That's
Yeah.
also like two different movies though, too.
Yeah.
Go
And
on.
again, the second one's not as good, but
Yeah.
I like that. That one's fun. You know, they're yeah. Where were we? Our grumpy Captain Bennett was Robert Bray. He started off under contract to RKO with a bunch of uncredited roles. By the 1960s, his name showed up in the credits, and he is best known for playing Forest Ranger Corey Stewart on Lassie. Lieutenant Woodward didn't have a whole lot to do, but you are most likely to recognize his face here. Greg Morris was, of course, Barney Collier on Mission Impossible and Lieutenant David Nelson on Vegas. Got a note that his son, Phil Morris, showed up in a lot of Star Trek, and of course, as Jackie Chiles on Seinfeld. So I had a
Yeah, he was in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. He played a Klingon in Deep Space Nine, as well as a Jem'Hadar. And he played astronaut John Kelly in One Small Step, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, like I almost felt bad. I'm like, oh, I'm writing so much stuff about the sun here, but I'm like, and I mean, come on, Greg Morris is perfectly legendary too. But hey, they got it going
I,
on as a
I
family
couldn't believe
affair.
I could not believe he was not in any Trek. I thought for sure, Mission Impossible, the studio is right next door. I thought he had to be in something.
Well, you've seen him on screen with Nimoy a lot, haven't you?
That's true. Yep.
Yeah, I finally got the Mission Impossible set late, but was it earlier this year or last year? I don't remember. Anyway, I just like log jammed season two into my eyes. I just felt like that was a sweet spot, you know, because that's where
Mhm.
they get yeah, that's where oh God, what's his name shows up. Now I'm blanking, but everyone knows what Phelps. Yeah,
Yeah. Like
most of
Peter
the
Graves.
there we go, Peter Graves. I don't know why I was blanking on his name, but I was. I did not write that in the trivia because this is about the Twilight Zone. Can you tell us what Rod said about this episode?
I sure can. Sorry. June 25th, 1964, or if you prefer, June 25th, 1876. The cast of characters, in order of their appearance, a patrol of General Custer's cavalry, and a patrol of National Guardsmen on a maneuver, past and present, are about to collide head on, as they are wont to do in a very special bivouac area known as the Twilight Zone.
All right. So I woke up this morning just before, I mean, it is this morning. It's 8:30 for me here. So I woke up and it finally hit me what this was making me think of a little bit. And this is going to be an obscuro thing from when I used to cover educational films. Have you ever seen on YouTube a clip of the British military like in the forest on LSD?
Have I ever seen a
It's
clip of the British military in the forest on
on LS. It
LSD?
was apparently now one. I'm not a scholar on this. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm sure it's 100% legit, but I think it is. But it's just yes, it's like we're testing this as something we can use as a weapon, right? LSD is a weapon. What would happen
Right.
if troops were on
Oh
it? It's
yeah.
the 50s, so they did the test.
So there would be this engineered, this drug induced designer drug engineered setup, which would force soldiers, that would culminate with the soldiers rushing into that battle in the most half-hearted assault ever.
Well, I mean, you know, if you're tripping hard enough, you don't know how to work that gun. And why would you want to shoot anyone every anyway, we're all
Oh, got
one,
it,
you
got it, got it,
know?
got it.
I've seen
Yeah,
Infinity and we're all one. Why
I
would
was
I
sort of
shoot a
skip
guy?
I was sort of skipping to the end when he was like, "Come on, man, let's do it." And
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
shows Langford and McCluskey, and they're like, I
I
don't
don't
really
know how
want
to
to know if
work
I
this
want to do
gun
it.
anymore. I don't know how to work this gun anymore.
I
That would
still
be,
I still got an arrow in my back.
yeah, yeah. That was wild. I was like, oh, he's got an arrow in the back. He's out. Which, to be fair, does not mean you're out. You're probably in a great deal of pain. But that
Yeah.
if it did not hit an organ, then it did not just kill you.
And as we learned in The Inner Light, just because you get stabbed with a knife doesn't mean you pull it out.
Oh yeah, that's a very bad call to do. So they were smart in that way. In other ways, I don't know if they were smart. What I do like about this episode, I can't quite tell if these guys are idiots or not. because they are getting weird
Okay.
visitations from the past.
Yeah, so this might be tipping my hand on whether or not I thought these guys were idiots or not. I really would have loved it if the cast of those guys was Forrest Tucker playing Connors, Larry Storch as Langford, and Ken Berry as McCluskey. I think that would have been perfect. The main cast from F Troop.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, there we go. See, I'm glad you said that because otherwise this would be another episode where I'd be like, should we toss in the Three Stooges? No, let's toss in F Troop. That's a much better idea. Or Gomer Pyle and a couple friends. That would work too. Um,
But it was just like even like the first guy I thought with McCluskey, I was like that could be Jack McBrayer, and then I'm like, well, he's got a little bit more on the ball than most of the characters played by Jack McBrayer. Jack McBrayer, I'm sure, is a very sharp young man. But then I was like, oh, he's kind of a Ken Berry type. So yeah, then it just kind of went from there. Is Warren Oates just a jerk in everything he's ever done? I went down his list of credits. My face lit up at Two Lane Blacktop because it's a Pontiac movie, and as you may know, Matt, I'm a Pontiac man. But yeah, Two Lane Blacktop. He was a very existential film where his character was only known by the car he drove. He was just GTO. It's three characters: GTO, the driver, and the mechanic, and the girl.
right. No, I
Um,
came into that movie from the Beach Boys thing and wanting to
oh
watch weird
yeah,
new
exactly
Hollywood
right.
films. Yeah, Dennis
Yeah, Carl
Wilson in the
Wilson.
back seat. Dennis
Yep,
in the back seat.
Dennis. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Dennis was the cool one. Carl was
Yep.
the sweet one.
Yeah, and like anything else that that other one guy was in, I just want to like rip his guitar out of his hand and smash it against the stairs and hand it back to him.
Yeah,
Um,
I hope that never happens to me because I roll around with a Gibson.
that won't happen to you, my friend.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
don't think you're nearly as as stuffy.
that was I don't know if I've said this on a podcast before. I think I probably have, and maybe not this one. That the biggest hit I had with Barbie, because any guy watching the movie Barbie, there's one moment where you're like, ooh, you know. So
Yeah.
mine was no, I didn't sing that particular song to a girl, but I probably did play my guitar at girls. And Ryan Gosling's got a real nice Gibson, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else on that beach in that scene is playing like the exact model I have. So because it's the cheapest one, that's still a
Right.
Gibson, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, okay,
So
give him that. But I was just like, oh, when that scene came out, oh no, that is me. Okay.
so speaking of TV props, where do you get a tank on a TV budget?
Is it made of cardboard? I guess it does move, doesn't it?
You know, I was kind of looking. It drove, it ran, it sounded legit. I mean, I don't know, you know, what they did with, you know, 80, you know, with you know, sound looping and stuff, or, you know, re-recording in the studio, but it sure looked like a tank. And I was just wondering, well, there's probably got to be a lot of excess stuff available for rent or whatever. But that was, I'm thinking they're on a TV budget, man. They got a tank for a good portion of
Well,
this.
think about, like Top Gun, right? That half
Yeah,
of the production look of that film is from the fact that the Navy was involved, right? So
right.
I'm wondering if they maybe had some deal with, some on a smaller scale, of course, it's just a tank, but if they had some kind of deal, because they're basically giving you a history lesson here and not necessarily throwing the U.S. Army under the bus. Everybody knows the
Not
Custer
no no.
story. Yeah.
I think the Army came across really pretty well. The commanding officer, the captain, as he called himself, was good. I liked when he said, "What do I do if I don't come back?" When Mr. Morris said, "What do I do if I don't come back?" He goes, "Well, apologize him and then shoot him in the leg."
I guess this is kind of like a weirdly conservative episode of The Twilight Zone,
Yeah.
written by Rod Serling. So, yeah, now I'm really sitting here wondering if there was a deal about that. Back in when I did the Sci-Fi Sanctuary, we talked to a guy a few times who writes books about, like military support of movies and stuff. And you could get, somebody knows somebody, you get a deal, and here's a tank.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, probably California, you know, National Guard, maybe it was involved a little bit. I didn't notice. I don't even think they put anything in the credit, like, you know, special thanks to the California National Guard for their assistance in making this show. I didn't notice anything like that in the credits, but hey, you know, it could have been the way. Do you think that if you were in a situation, Matt, where you were tracking something hostile and you're picked up on their trail and you said, this trail is a little too fresh for my pay, don't you think you would like pay attention at that point. Like that would like cause you to pay a little bit more attention, not just casually turn your back and take a swig of your canteen.
Well, I don't know. You're out there, you're kind of tired. You don't make the greatest decisions. I'm thinking of the
Yeah.
two biggest tracking things I've done. I worked at a summer camp one summer, and
Oh, you have a real world tracking experience.
yeah, there was a bear, and we didn't want the bear going. It was like a smaller bear, but we were like, Mama's got to be around too, right? So
Right.
we followed behind about 100 meters, basically to make sure it didn't go into one of the kids' dorms or something.
Okay.
So we were following a bear around for a few hours. I did that, and I was a Boy Scout. There's Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico. We were
Right.
way out in the wilderness, and it was I think a 13-mile trek to the next campsite. But the actual trail was like went way around and was like 20 miles. So I was like, I will use this compass and I will orient us to the campsite. And I did it perfectly. One catch,
Dang.
one catch over. So 13 miles perfectly. I used topography. I didn't notice the last bit of topography. When we got to the campsite, we are at the top of a cliff and the campsite is at the bottom of the cliff. Like we can see it. It's right there.
It's right there. Okay. So because you were a very experienced tracker, but you thought in two dimensions and not three dimensions.
Yeah, that'd be an orienteer, by the way. But yes, I got conned.
Nice.
Totally got conned on that. Yeah, I was
That's awesome.
14
And
years
also,
old.
like to be fair, like when you're out in the wilderness like that, or frontier, I guess would be a better way to put it. Your back is always going to be turned to something, right?
Right, right. Well, also a topography map, like if it's a cliff, it has like the five lines are not touching. They still have to be a little bit apart, so you can't
Yeah,
necessarily
I
tell
get
it's
it.
a cliff.
Yeah,
What we ended up doing
those.
was
Yeah.
walking a click north and finding a safer place to go down, which was still mildly dangerous. But whatever. If we got hurt out there, it's not like we were anywhere near civilization, so it would have been a
Nice.
problem.
Yeah, offline I'll have to tell you about my wife and I made a decision to rent a scooter on the island of Vis in Croatia to go from one side of the island to a hidden beach on the other side. Yeah, not smart. Yeah, there were a lot of places where the lines of topography were too close to really judge the altitude. But go on.
Okay. No, I scarred my daughter against the kind of swan paddle boats, they put in lakes or
Mhm.
whatever, like small lakes. She was 5 and we got one and I'm paddling, but her feet can't reach. And it was a really windy day, so I could not go back to where because you
Yeah.
needed two people to go against
Uh-huh.
the wind. So we ended up
Yeah.
having to like get a boat to tow us back across the lake. But I was like trying to like paddle against the wind and she was like flipping out because we weren't moving. So I don't think she
Yeah,
likes those anymore.
I have been there. I thought, it was really super convenient that one of the characters, namely Langsford, played by Warren Oates, needed to have everything explained to him. That was super convenient.
That's the history lesson, isn't it? This episode, that's why I'm sitting here wondering if it had military support because it's a dry history lesson, like kind of like
Yeah.
Twilight zoned up a bit,
Yep.
Which I mean, the Twilight Zone element's fine. I like a weird time bounce. Twilight Zone's usually pretty good at weird, unexplained time jumps. So
Well, and I was wondering, because I covered 100 yards over the rim with you also, and don't ask me how that title just came to mind. But that was the same kind of thing, like, time jump right over the rim. And like I was wondering, I almost think that they had like the weird like wind shift also there to, kind of show uh the change in time. Because obviously on any given day, the temperature is not going to be the same, the pressure is not going to be the same. So if you jump from one time to another, you're going to have something. Of course, Matt, you're going to have something like a wind gust to signify the time change.
yeah, or you could just be floating in the middle of space because Earth is in a different position in the galaxy. Of course, what is absolute
Oh,
position
oh,
anyway, right? So
oh man, it is crazy. It's crazy the way it moves. It's just nuts. You think we're just here spinning around in a circle. No,
But yeah,
no.
the Mark Twain book, the um, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, that's an unexplained time jump. I mean, I guess the thing with the time machine, where the movie came out in 1960, the book, of course, 70
Hmm.
years or so earlier. But I mean, I guess the idea that we will have a machine that will take us through time was still a newish concept. I mean, you might have a talisman or something, but building a machine that would be capable of doing that was not now we assume when we watch television, something you have to have that. Avengers Endgame, they got to build that time machine. But
Right.
at this point in time, people were perfectly be like, "Oh, time jumped." Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've told this story on this podcast before, but in the mid '90s, my dad and I in Ocean City, Maryland, we went to lunch in this place, and we are still kind of convinced it was a time jump because we went in there, everything was really cheap. It looked like the 20s in there. The food was good.
Hmm.
We came back a year later, and it was a sports bar. So we were like, did we like just step back and eat in the
Shut up.
in the 1920s? I don't know. It was, yeah, because we were like, oh, we like that. Let's go back, and it was like a sports bar. And the
And it
weirdest thing
wasn't
is,
there.
it wasn't there in the sports bar. It did not look like it had just opened. So. I mean, it was a year, maybe a hurricane came through and you buffed it up a bit. But
Yeah.
so I mean, there is a logical explanation. I'm not saying here being I've been through time, man, but in our minds, you're like "This really seeing like the experience feels like we had a time jump.
Yeah. I
Even if
I get
we
it.
didn't, it feels like it. So.
So were you picking up like Final Countdown vibes at all, like through the first, say, 20 minutes of this?
Oh, that's one I have not seen in a while.
Okay. Yeah,
But
that's
now,
aircraft carrier goes back in time. They make the big decision that they're going to stop the attack on Pearl Harbor,
yeah,
and then the time vortex opens up again. No machine, just sort of time jump,
yeah, I mix
and
that
forward they
up
go.
with I mix that up with the Manhattan Project movie, which has nothing to do with the bomb. It's a similar
Yeah.
it's the Montauk experiment
For
movie.
some reason, I always mix it up with the Philadelphia experiment. So
Oh,
yeah,
you know
we
what?
all
You
get.
know what? You're correct. It's a Philadelphia experiment. I see. I
Oh,
just
okay.
conflated. Yeah, but I've more
Yeah.
recently seen the Philadelphia experiment. So when I keep thinking back, I'm thinking of that. But yes, Philadelphia experience, the Montauk one, the final countdown is just kind of unexplained, but must be somewhat, influenced by that. So.
Yeah. I was thinking they were going to roll in with the tank and whatever. I don't think you could do. I don't know what you could do with the tank, because it's one shot at a time. Boom, boom, boom. Obviously, they would be the last three standing, but I don't think it would have done anything to help Custer's 200 guys or his arm.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, here's two examples. Did you see this year's Shogun series?
I did not. Yeah, no, I
Okay.
wanted to, and I think it's sort of loosely on my list.
Well, my folks are in Japan right now, and that we're making that, a scotch and a Shogun at night. So we got two more episodes to go. But there's a scene where they demonstrate just like how much cannons can screw up people, and those are like a few cannons, not one tank. But you see that, and it's one of the goriest scenes I've seen in anything, torture porn horror movies included. When you see this group of samurai just torn apart by cannonballs.
Holy cow! Yeah, spoilers, folks. Um,
So there's that. Yeah. There's that. There's also. Well, I didn't tell you the what the circumstances. That would be the spoiler.
Yeah, it's okay, but you're right. I think as soon as the tank rolled in and fired a shot, there'd be a lot of folks getting out of there to reassess,
Yeah.
if you will.
The other one would be Cortez in Mexico, right? People are like, how did a couple hundred Spanish guys destroy the Aztec Empire? That sounds insane. But
Yeah.
when you think about it, so we've got the Aztecs are skilled fighters. They're
Hmm.
holding obsidian swords, which are very sharp, but if you slap them against metal, they're going to break. And at
Yeah.
best, their armor is like, like reeds or something. They don't have
Yeah.
heavy armor. We got Cortez in full iron armor. They have guns, they have cannons, they have dogs also in armor that will bite the hell out of you. And the Aztecs have never
Oh,
seen
yeah.
dogs. So when you look at this, it's basically like the Aztecs were going up against a few Terminators. I mean, that's literally the
Yeah.
comparison there. These guys,
Right.
I mean, they were Terminators. You could not, it was like three Spanish guys died and then like 3,000 Aztecs in a battle. It's like
Yeah.
insane the numbers that happened there.
Ooh, baby. Yeah. No, so yeah, the tank would have been effective. I don't know why, because even the captain said later on, he was like, "Yeah, it's too bad they didn't bring the tank with them. They would have fared much better." I think this was after, seeing their names on the monument wall.
Well, earlier in the episode, I did write the note, let's not intentionally lend Custer the advantage of a tank. So I guess I was glad they didn't take the tank with them in the end. But
Yeah.
I guess that's where I really started thinking about the British guys tripping on an LSD. I'm like, anyone in their right mind would get the tank.
Right. They would definitely get the tank. Hey, have you ever worked with somebody
I
who
have.
was you gotta I was doing a long the long pause was too long. But have you ever worked with somebody who is so caught up and distracted by something not job related, and you're just like, dude, focus, okay? Enough with the Custer, enough with Little Bighorn, okay? You got a tank, take it down the river, do something that we want you to do in the tank down the river, and then come back. That's all I want you to do.
That might be me, to be honest, ranting about things at a in a central workroom. Um, I know once or twice when I was making like flashcards and sitting there at the computer finding like dumb images. I was sitting next to Luke at this point because he was naming the file the worst things he could as I found them, and I'm just sitting there laughing like a loon at this computer, which was probably not good for my rep, but that's what happened.
That's probably pretty on brand.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and because, in my job, I'm flying with guys that it's like, okay, let's look at the weather. Let's see what direction we're taking off and landing. Do we have enough fuel? Is there anything wrong with the airplane? And the guy will have his iPad out and be like, hey, man, you see commodities are up a quarter and interest rates down an eighth. And, my hedge fund or my mutual fund is doing great. And I'm like, can we just do a checklist? I just I
Well,
just want to get
here's the
off the gate and
difference.
taxi.
Here's the difference. You are flying a large piece of machinery with many people in it that
Yeah.
could come to an accident. Whereas the
Right.
biggest risk I have is that a 4-year-old suddenly going to decide to punch me in the crotch. So,
Yeah, but you know what?
there's
That's a risk. But
there
what
are
you told me
children I
about
stand around sideways.
yeah, but you are willing to lay all that on the line to track a mama bear to keep these kids safe. So good for you, sir.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago, and also it's kind of fun. Something I did catch with these guys, just talking about their professionality though, because yeah, they do seem like the goof troop. Sorry, I want to think about Goofy instead of the F troop, but somewhere in the middle, it is mentioned that wait, this is just the National Guard. So if
Yeah,
a
yeah, it
National
sure
Guard
is.
guy is going to get a little obsessed with doing some dumb archaeology, I mean, he's a weekend warrior. He's not a
Yeah. So
full in the
apparently,
military guy.
what the captain said to Connors, right? He was who was I think he was a either a gunnery sergeant or a master sergeant. I think he had three stripes up and three down. So, um, what he said to him is, "You've got enough regular army to know better." Right. So he's got some kind of real military. The other two, I think, were just, sound like they were full time or only, National Guardsmen, which don't get me wrong. I mean, those guys go to Army boot camp, basic training. They are, fully qualified, but you're right. They're doing it, on the weekends. They go back to their, teaching job or whatever they have during the week. Um, so it is different. And if they want to do a little exploring while they're out, keeping, South Dakota safe from college graduates testing soil,
If
then
it's
that's
not south, it's
probably
north.
okay. North, south, whatever. Then that's probably their prerogative. Speaking of that, I did think that was kind of a cool line and a cool progressive line by the captain when he said, "Hey, if you do meet any Indians out there, take it very slow. They all have college degrees and they're probably testing the soil." He said something along those lines, which I thought was kind of a cool line, that these are not what was out there 100 years ago.
At the same time, that means that the makers of the Twilight Zone maybe were not as aware of how like iffy these reservations were. They're making say, oh, they're just out there, they're college grads, they're testing the water, it's great, which I wish that was reality, but some of the reservations can be kind of dark places.
So the question that I had, and I'd love anybody to answer this, is like, have they gotten worse in the last 60 years? Like, was there a time where, there was decent education on the reservations
I don't think
and that
so,
kind of thing?
because
You don't think so?
real
Yeah.
late Canada was taking kids, throwing them to the
Yeah.
other side of the country, and putting them in a Western school so they would be fully
Yeah.
Westernized.
But
That's
that's
Canada,
Canada. We're
and
way more
yeah,
progressive
yeah,
than
of
that.
course, yeah. No, I think it's more of a case of like nobody was paying attention, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, a few of them. a few of them built casinos, and that worked out for a time at least, and maybe it's still working out for some.
Hmm.
I've also heard where that backfired a few times. So
Well, I think the casinos exist, and you'd have to think. I mean, my assumption is it's like everything else that, a few people make a ton of money and other people are, working in them for the absolute minimum that they can be paid, scraping to get by. I mean, that's just
yeah.
my hypothesis.
One of the interesting ones is Cherokee, North Carolina, which is and they have a casino there now. But
Hmm.
those are the Cherokees that managed to hide in the woods long enough during the Trail of Tears not to go anywhere. So there actually is a very small enclave of Cherokees still out east, whereas most of them were, death marched out to Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah. And from what I understand, there's some Seminole also that were sort of
Yeah, yeah. From Georgia,
yeah.
but you can visit New Dakota maybe is the name. It was the Cherokee capital where they had tried to build like a little parliament building. They had like a
Hmm.
nice Western style house for their whatever they called their prime minister. They built this little town, and within 5 years they were kicked out of that little town. So they were like trying to be like, okay, we're going to do your game. We'll make our own little parliament and
Hmm.
do it like you're doing. And that didn't work because they wanted the land,
Of
or the
course.
U.S.
Yeah.
wanted the land. Yeah, yeah. So uh, it's interesting seeing how much they were trying to play the game. Which if anyone visits, that's in northwest Georgia, and a pretty interesting place. Near there is also the some of the mounds you can visit, which are always fascinating places.
Hmm.
There's yeah, I mean, there was quite a bit of civilization there. Disease, like by the time we saw most of the tribes, disease had like already they'd had their apocalypto, not just down there, but everywhere.
Right. Yeah. It is. And again, I have a giant void, I think, where other people have very broad and deep a broad and deep knowledge base on this. Um, but back to this, I did think it was an interesting line to say like this is not like if you see anybody out there, it's not going to be Sue from 100 years ago. It's going to be modern people from
Right, right. They probably
18.
would not be as aggressive in any case. Like
Right. Yeah.
no matter what the situation is, they're probably not
Yeah.
going to be attacking a tank crew in 1963.
And you know what? That's probably what poor McCluskey thought.
Yep.
And he ended up with an
McCluskey.
arrow in his back for the rest of the episode.
And he goes into battle with an arrow in his back. I guess he's out by that
Oh
point.
my God. Just back
It's
to that, man. That was the Connor's
lots
just
of
like,
dialogue with
let's
a
go,
guy with the arrow
boys.
in the
And
back.
then they're just like, I don't really want to go.
No, I'm just like he's still talking. Oh, when I was actually writing the notes too, the ending made me think of the end of the fourth Black Adder series, if you've ever seen that, where it's a
I don't
comedy,
know what
but
that is. I mean, I know what it is, but for our audience, Matt, could
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
explain?
No, it's Rowan Atkinson's comedy, which is not Mr. Bean. It's based on him doing elaborate insults towards everyone. The fourth series in World War One, it's very funny, but the last scene is a heart wrencher as it shows our crew of laugh-a-lot soldiers, marching to into their death into the trenches, which
And
this made me think of.
hilarity
Yeah.
ensues. Uh-huh.
Well, not that that's the last scene of the entire series.
Oh man.
And they're about to get wiped out, end show
Yeah.
forever. And you're, wow, that's a little heavy for a comedy, you know? But that's kind of
Yep.
what's happening here. I mean, these guys, without their tank in particular, I mean, they have rifles a little better than a, late 19th century rifle, I'm sure, but that's not going
Hmm.
to do them much. They're not showing
No.
up with Terminator technology. So, which
Yeah.
they had.
So you mentioned right off the bat, you were like, so the twist is actually in the title, right? The seventh is full of phantoms. Um, I noticed on my second watching of this thing, I noticed the line pretty much right away where I think it was Connors that said a lot of ghosts around here. And then I was kind of wondering, like, is it possible that all of the seventh cavalry was made up of ghosts from different times being sort of sucked into this and
Maybe because
becoming the actual seventh cavalry was made up of phantoms the entire thing.
maybe ghosts catch up and look like modern whatever it is. They a
Hmm.
hundred years ago they died in a Union uniform and they've just updated. Because I am like, why are they doing war games around Little Bighorn in whichever Dakota it is? That's kind of, I mean, maybe the military does this all the time. I don't know,
You
but
know what? You know what, Matt? In hindsight, I should have just said the Dakota territories. Yeah,
there we
that would have
oh,
covered
that
it.
sounds good.
That would have covered it. Yep.
Up in the Dakota territories. But no, I do like that. I have randomly run into wigwams weirdly in the grounds of a Japanese castle. Uh,
Wow.
I don't know why they were there. They put them up for a couple months, and yeah, I
Okay.
guess it was just cool. But yeah, they had these large wigwam things in the middle of a castle keep, which was bizarre.
The Yeah, that is, and I kind of wonder about, so because we did so many, but it was, in my mind, I look back to when we're kids and we did these, coast to coast nationwide camping trips with my parents, you know, Pontiac Bonneville executive safari station wagon. And, you think you're camping out in the middle of nowhere and you're going to look for, a wigwam or, a ghost town or something like that. And you realize, in hindsight, like we're probably staying at like a KOA, Campground of America, you know, out, out,
Well, in this
you
2 week
know,
hike I mentioned before with my
yeah.
orienteering, we
Uh-huh.
since we are so far from everything, we did get to encounter a few actual ghost towns with zero tourists and rundown buildings. So that was
Oh,
pretty
that's
cool.
cool, man. Was there a jail that you could like get locked up in, or was that just a little too much Brady Bunch?
That might be a little too much Brady Bunch. No, I mean this was like just I mean this was falling apart. It's near
Yeah,
no roads. It was
right.
like the guide was like, "Hey, I know where this is. You guys want to do a 2 hour hike to see it?" And we are like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Better than running around from cows. We were getting bored. There were guys picking up like dried cow manure and like throwing it at each
Hmm.
other. It's a game. That's not a good game.
Yeah. So how do you think the captain writes this up? Right. So he's got his three guys. He's got his tank. He's got the note. He's got the names of them chiseled in granite at this memorial.
Well, if they're all dead and they don't know it, he doesn't really have to write it up if we go with the theory you posited a minute or two ago. But otherwise, how do you write that up? You know what? Maybe you don't. Especially,
Do
I
you
guess
report this, sir? Are you
he's
kidding me?
yeah, really. I mean, I'm thinking of the weirder Trek episodes. But uh the last thing I had here to really throw out was when he was screaming at him he's going to give him a section 8. I couldn't help but think of Corporal Klinger, that being
Yeah.
his
Are
pipe
you
dream.
bucking? Yeah. When he said, "Are you bucking for a Section 8?" I was like,
Yes, I
"Yep."
will put on a dress for this. Which
I just watched the episode the other day where General MacArthur was supposed to come to town and ended up just doing a drive-by with Klinger standing at the entranceway in the Statue of Liberty costume, holding up the torch.
yeah, I have to do my mash sometimes soon. The nice thing about the at least the first DVDs they put out where you could turn off the laugh tracks on every episode, which I love. I like watching MASH without a laugh track
Yeah,
because if the jokes are funny, I will laugh at them. I don't need the laugh track to tell me that.
100%. Yep. And then it's like, okay, where are these people sitting?
Well,
You
in
know,
the
in
amphitheater around the around the
like,
4077. I don't know.
yeah, I guess.
But no, that show because the writing was great.
Yeah.
So you will laugh. I mean, there's plenty of
Hmm.
sitcoms that absolutely need a laugh track. The Twilight Zone didn't need a laugh track in that one episode, or maybe it did because that episode wasn't that
Yeah.
funny. Um,
Speaking of that, I was watching an episode of Voyager the other day, and I was thinking how funny it would be with a laugh track. Like, hey Harry, playing captain again.
oh, there is on YouTube. I
Laugh
saw
track.
recently. Have you seen the someone did it's like a 10-minute edit of Star Trek 5 with a laugh track.
Oh
It's on
no,
YouTube. I will,
that
and
sounds good.
I highly recommend that. It's
I,
great.
I've never seen a Star Trek Five fan edit that I didn't like because somebody edited it down to about like a 45-minute episode, and it was actually pretty good. Laugh tracks, I think, would be great. Laugh track episode of Spock's Brain was fantastic. Just yeah, just keep them coming, people.
I mean, for me at this point, I mean, yeah, I love Star Trek 5. It's the Moonraker of the series, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
And Moonraker is kind of my favorite Bond film. Is it the best one? No, but it's my favorite one.
But what do you think is the best and which is your favorite are two different questions.
Yes, yes. I probably would go with one of the Craigs probably. I'd probably go with Casino Royale's like the best,
Yeah,
personally.
I would say Skyfall is the best. But my favorite would be something else. My favorite is probably Live and Let Die.
Oh yeah, that one's fun. Well, that's got the theme song going for it as well.
Well,
So
yeah, and I think like as a 6 year old, um, that was I think in whatever retconned memory, that I've come up with over the years. I think that was the first movie that like I got to go to with my dad and my big brother. Like that wasn't a kids movie.
okay. I guess that's
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi on my end, just to yeah, that's that dating ourselves there, but
Dating myself a little bit more, Matt.
well, the Return of the Jedi was also a while ago, so
Yeah.
um but yeah, let's do a few questions on this one. So I think you asked a question, I never quite answered it, but now I forgot what the question was. Maybe you forgot what the
Oh,
question was.
that's quite all right. I think the last question I remember asking was, how do you write this up? But
Okay,
I think we agreed carefully.
yeah, yeah, and I don't have a real answer for that, I guess. Let's see if you have a real answer for my questions. The first being, who in this episode went in or through the Twilight Zone?
Well, I think obviously, well, not obviously. I think Connors, McCluskey, and Langford
New
uh
citizens of the Twilight Zone.
did, yeah. I think the captain must have because he was sort of at least being kept apprised of this journey
He's
the
got to
whole
write the
time.
report, like you said,
Yeah.
or at least he's
And,
supposed to.
there is, I've got my military friends at the airline say you never want to be the senior man with a secret. So
Ah.
it's good that that Connors kept the boss apprised regardless. So I would say those four, as well as any other potential phantoms that made up the Seventh Cavalry.
Oh yeah, there is everyone's a phantom because I was going to say Greg Morris. I don't think he had anything to do with the Twilight Zone this episode. He
I
saw a
really
few
don't think he
weird
did.
things, but he didn't have to engage, right?
Right. Yeah, and also like there was this weird like distance between the captain and him where the captain would like give him a task, but then not really explain anything.
Mm. Like
It
I'm
was
looking at
almost like sort of don't worry about it.
like going back to my trivia. I was like, well, it's these four guys, and oh God, Greg Morris can't skip him. I mean, that's why I listed him.
Can't
If he was
can't
any
skip
other
him.
actor, I
Yep.
would not have put him in the trivia.
Yeah, I get that. So yeah, I'd say those four. How you, sir? Any additions, subtractions, different opinions?
Like I said, just looking at my trivia here, I'm like that. It looks like my trivia kind of made the same decision. So, I will agree with that. But I guess the captain doesn't have any agency in this. But how about our three weekend warriors? I guess one of them was it. The sergeant was not. But yeah, did they deserve their trip into Custer's into the Battle of Little Bighorn?
I'm gonna say, and this might be just shooting from the hip right here, so to speak. Okay, one, I don't think I mentioned this before. I cannot believe how quick McCluskey was to fire because we started to talk at length about the captain who said, if you meet any Indians down there, take it very slow. Right? They've probably got college degrees and they're doing soil samples. As soon as they saw dust over the hill, McCluskey started shooting. And I think it was hinted at that he actually killed somebody, that he killed one of
Because
the Sioux.
because that's what happened in the
Right,
original
right, right,
build
right.
up to
Yeah,
the battle. So it had to
that
happen here.
it had to happen here. So yeah, so I did not think that was cool of McCluskey. I think McCluskey deserved it. I think to a
If it had
lesser,
to happen, though, did he have free
yeah.
will about that? Did it have to
Oh
happen?
yeah, I don't know how any of this works. I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't like
Timey-wimey
it.
stuff gives you a headache, I get it.
And when I say any of this, I mean any of this, man. I am making this up as I go along. Um, I think Connor's, um, I don't want to say preoccupation, right? Knowledge of the past, right? Ignorance of the past, of history dooms one to repeat it, right? So having a good, knowledge of history, right? Ignorance of history dooms one to repeat it. Um, Connors was a military man, right? He had an interest in history. He read a lot about Little Bighorn when he was a kid. But who in that area didn't read a lot about cowboys and Indians when they were kids? He was probably playing cowboys and Indians as a little kid a lot. So good for them for knowing it. I think that maybe being too caught up in history might doom somebody to be trapped in it. There's that saying that says, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay. If you are a student of Little Bighorn, maybe everything looks like the Battle of Little Bighorn. If you are, a history of General Custer, maybe everything looks like, a repeat of that battle to you. And it's possible that Connor's fondness of the past caused him to deserve his trip to the Twilight Zone.
He should have
Uh,
known he was repeating it to a certain degree, although it does
I
seem
think he did
fantastic and
know.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did know that he was, and he kind of said we have to do this at one point. The one that was, I think, sort of an unwilling participant trapped in all of this, which doesn't bother me because it's he just had to go anyway, and that was Warren Oates. That was Langford. So probably not deserving, but I think his ignorance of just general everything sort of made him deserving as well.
At the same time, he is sort of the voice of reason, being like, let's take a few steps back. This is kind of nuts. Of course, then he does turn the knob. By the way,
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw out the Japanese version of hammer and nails is that the nail that sticks up must be hammered down. So in that
Oh,
case,
so it's
Captain
telling you, yeah, nail it.
Captain Bennett should have just much more quickly taken Connors off duty.
I think sending them back out the next day after several hours of insubordination was an interesting command decision.
Yes, yeah. So that's maybe Bennett not making the best decision, but he is a captain in the Dakota territory, so
In
you
the
know,
in the in the in one of the Dakota National Guards, probably
yeah.
not a lot of other qualified tank commanders in that encampment of maybe 8 people that they could put together on a TV budget.
Well,
So
they
yeah,
were
I think he
spread
had no
out.
choice.
They were
Yeah,
spread out.
yeah.
The
I don't
budget's
think
in
his MP could drive a tank.
the money's in the tank, right? All the money's in the tank. That's where you get your production value from. Maybe it's from the National Guard. We don't know. Just national, yeah, I guess they have tanks. Um, so before we completely move past the question, once they do permanently go back to the Battle of Little Bighorn, is there any way it goes well for them? Because they just run over guns a-blazing, which that was a bad choice. But is there anything else where they could have worked it out? I mean, they're going to get spotted. They're in the plains, they look weird in their military
Yeah.
uniforms.
Uh-huh. Like I honestly think they might have gotten shot pretty much straight away by, Union
Yeah,
soldiers.
yeah. I just think they're
Uh,
doomed no matter what. It doesn't even matter what Connors knows or thinks or wants to repeat. They could have walked over the hill and then just been like, "Hey, what's going on?" Same thing happens.
yeah, I think we pretty much saw, I think they pretty much met the same fate as Butch and Sundance.
Yeah. I do. Spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, folks, you may want to start with Butch and Sundance the early days.
It's still in its packaging. I haven't watched it yet. No, I think we all know how that movie ends. But actually, no, I haven't seen it. I got it on Blu-ray because it's cheap, but it's still in its packaging at the moment. One of the new Hollywood ones I missed out on. Uh,
Yeah. Now, warning them of the ambush the day before, something like that might have made a difference.
See, this seems like an early version of the Donnie Darko time loop, where it's like to finish the loop, they have to go back and die
Right. Yeah.
because they're all right. I mean, no one looked at the plaque before. Maybe their names were there from the get-go
I bet they were.
because no one would have looked until that point,
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Yeah.
they
And it was
weren't looking
also
for him at
weird.
that point either. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was William Connors, and then it was like Richard McCluskey and Michael Langsford. So I got to see Michael Richard on the just written names
oh
written
yeah,
above them. So I was like, it's close to my name.
that's exciting. That never happens with my name.
I
Comages
bet. Yeah. No.
happen. Although there was a basketball player named Dallas Comages, so
Yeah.
my
I mean,
parents used to get
you might see it spelled out in a screenplay, but that'd be a different kind of story.
my parents used to get calls in the 80s from fans trying to see if we were related and had a connection, which no, we didn't.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Tripometer, 0 is not trippy. 5 is very trippy. Where do you want to put this one?
Um, like a like a 2.2.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty low. I mean, pretty, I mean, we've seen things like this and 100 yards over the rim with just a time jump. Like you said, the twist was kind of in the title. A lot of ghosts out here is a little bit of foreshadowing, if not straight up prophecy in the dialogue. So I think we all kind of knew where this was going.
For me, yeah,
So
Westerns typically bring down the tripometers for me a bit. I find Western stuff to be not so trippy.
yeah,
However, the tank crew acts so bizarrely, and not even that's unrealistic, that's bizarre. I think I'm willing to give it a 3.
hey
Just
man,
because they
you're the
actually
expert.
just for the Western ones, it does seem a little bit weirder.
Hmm.
Geez, I'm going to keep my 3, but now I'm sort of thinking I should have gone with your 2.2 because it's also this weird dry history lesson, which a weird dry history lesson is really trippy. So I'm going to sympathetically agree with you while still giving it a 3.
And to give the episode a little bit of credit, I think it wasn't. There were we were still. I mean, I guess this was 1963, and I can't really put my finger on the zeitgeist of 1963 versus say 1953. But I think if this was made in 1953, there would have been a lot more of painting the Sioux in a negative light. Whereas this episode really didn't do that. It didn't paint them as, negatively. It's sort of just was very, very neutral on that. Um, which I think was a good thing. Whereas
Yeah.
like at one point it would have been like, yeah, they were attacked by savages and said things like that, which we've all heard that we've all sort of cringe at this point. This episode just sort of avoided those kind of pitfalls that earlier, Western television lived in.
Yeah, I guess that's a bit of a progressive edge because, like I was saying, I felt like this episode is weirdly conservative, being a history lesson about the
Hmm.
U.S. Army. But I guess the question when someone watching this is, was there enough sugar on the pill?
Yeah.
Because it is accurate. You did learn about Little Bighorn after you watch this. You probably know more about Little Bighorn after watching this, unless you're just a buff into that specific area of history.
Like you said, I feel much better after knowing that you read the wiki page and said it's pretty accurate. Good
It's
enough for me, my
really,
friend.
really, really long. There are some serious Little Bighorn buffs out there. Like I did not read the entire page, just to be clear, but I did confirm that all of the locations they say and when they were there, and the thing about the
Hmm.
scout and the thing about coming across the teepees, all of that is accurate. So I thought that was actually cool. So even though it is a dry history lesson, it's an accurate one, which you don't always get. I mean, Braveheart, come
Yeah.
on. Braveheart
Yeah.
gets everything wrong.
Hmm.
Um, Unless you got a big thought, I guess we'll start wrapping this one up.
Yeah, I think we I got a couple of things just that I thought, history transcends time. Even though they were out in this area, out in this land, this confluence of Little Bighorn and the other river which sounded a lot like Little Bighorn. Um and the big Little Bighorn rivers, or whatever they were, that even though that was 80 years ago, that history still existed. That battle was as alive 80 years later as it was 80 years before that. That was kind of my takeaway from the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Near here, we actually have Sekigahara, where they had two major battles way back in the day, big samurai battles. So,
Yeah.
visiting there, it's like, do you feel anything there? Which,
Yeah.
now it's a museum, a field, and you see houses around because it's actually a
Yeah.
pretty suburban area now.
Yep. Yeah. It was the confluence of the Bighorn and the Little Bighorn rivers. And yeah, I think that was what I got at. It was like, this may be 80 years later, but this just happened,
Yeah.
and that battle is maybe still being fought today in some ways.
I mean, the house I grew up in, what happened there, before that house
Yeah.
was there? Because I mean, that Civil War
Hmm.
stuff probably happened there, or even go farther back and things happened. The
100%.
house I'm in
Yep.
now. I mean, hey, what went on here? Uh,
Yeah.
Tokugawa's armies were probably marching up this valley right through my, future house. So that's
Yep.
interesting to think about what's happened on the land you are on. So anyway, I guess I'll ask how well you have some podcasts and stuff coming up for realsies
Yeah,
as opposed to a few months.
we just recorded an episode with David A. Goodman, executive producer and writer for the Orville. He wrote a couple of comic books, the Orville comic books, as well as something called Space Job, which was a pilot that did not get picked up that he made into a comic book. That's a lot of fun. These are both on Dark Horse Comics. And the other one's called The Masked Mocker, Macher, which is Yiddish for kind of a big deal. It literally means maker, but it's used sort of as like the big deal. So that's a 1930s Hollywood setting, and it's a I think a wannabe actor becomes a wrestler, and that's a fun story. And then David also was co-showrunner of Hysteria on Peacock, which just premiered a couple of last week. And that is about a 1980s garage metal band that kind of gets caught up in the satanic panic. And I'm thinking, David wrote for Golden Girls. David wrote for Futurama. David wrote for the Orville, right? This is going to be fun, right? A misunderstanding, an episode of Three's Company. No, check it out. It's on Peacock. It's called Hysteria. It's got Julie Bowen. It's got Anna Camp. It's got Bruce Campbell. It's awesome. Really, really good. Check it out on Peacock.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes me think I'm in the middle. I'm 67% through a book about the first 10 years of MTV. So, when their Satanic Panic, of course, comes up at their mid 80s hair metal peak.
Yeah, yeah,
Lots of wild stories in there from the video shoots because that was the Wild West of video shooting or movie
right.
shooting. It wasn't like a Hollywood film crew. So
Yeah.
there are some insane stories in that book. So sure, I forgot the name of it though.
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. No, I don't know what I'll plug are my podcasts, show up, give us a good review and write one if you want. I'd like to read reviews when they show up in the Apple podcast or whatever it is. That's for Time Enough Podcast. That's this one. What else do I do? Films and Filth. You're there sometimes. We're talking about what are supposed to be really good and really bad movies according to the Internet Movie Database. Podcast 1999. Mike, you're there sometimes. We just finished up Space 1999. We took a little break for Halloween. We did The Omen, and now we are going ape by doing all of the original ape movies and the 70s TV shows. I like the newer ones, but it just doesn't seem like we should do those. They don't seem of a piece with 70s apes. I need a
There
man
you
in a
go.
monkey suit.
As our friend John Champion said, it's going to be a goddamn glorious ape fest.
Okay, yeah. I almost wanted that to be the last line, but that doesn't make any sense for this episode. So, so I guess we're
Well, you
just.
you control the editing, sir. So
Oh no, I gotta leave it there. I guess I'll say, well, this is one where I say let's once more into the breach, my friend, and then you can rewind and listen to your line again. Okay, that should do it there. No, I don't edit a goddamn out. I'll let assholes in because I had fun because the episode that came out this week, Luke slipped a word I had to edit at the very end, but I just
okay,
put a theme song there because the
yeah.
censor I use is a second of the
hmm
first second of the theme song, so it just ends with the theme song like in its entirety as the edit.
Well, this was fun, man. I got to run. My wife's got a date night planned for us, and we got to be out the door in about probably 5-10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Um, Really quick, just before you go, I just want to scream a
Sure.
few films and filth coming up and see if any get your picadillo. Ones that do not currently have names are Braveheart, Hercules in New York, The Dark Knight Rises, and Old Boy. Any of those appealing to you?
Oh man, I mean, I'm surprised a couple of those aren't spoken for yet. Um, I feel like I've been taking a lot of the films.
Oh,
I
you
kind of I
okay?
kind of want to filth.
Oh, you want to Hercules in New York? Schwarzenegger's first
Yeah,
film. I'd put you
his
down for that.
first film. Okay.
First film, yeah, I'll put you down for that because that'll be a fun one. And yeah, especially because Luke is a Schwarzenegger obsessor. But that'll be in a month or two. So I'll get to you then.
Great.
Have a groovy date
Okay.
night.
All righty, Matthew.
Thank
Great to
you
see
as
you, sir.
always. Word up.
Thanks. Bye now.